Support for the Startup Life is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-belt grooming. Startup Nation, personal grooming is super important, not only from a hygiene standpoint, but also from a confidence one as well. And that is why you need to have a tight haircut and, well, a nice groomed undercarriage as well. And when doing that, you don't want to use the same razor, do you? That's just absurd. And this is why our friends at Manscaped have given you another option. Introducing the all-new Lawnmower 3.0 by Manscaped. This lightweight and waterproof razor features precision engineered blades for safe trimming in sensitive areas and a 7,000 RPM motor with quiet stroke technology. Ladies, Father's Day is just around the corner, and this will make a perfect gift for that guy on the go. Use code The Startup Life in all caps for 20% off and free shipping on your brand new Lawnmower 3.0 at manscaped.com. We have a link there in the show notes for easy access if you're listening to the replay on the podcast. And while you're there, be sure to check out all the other products from manscaped.com as well. So for proper manscaping without the fear of hurting anything, go with Manscaped. Trust me, your family of jewels will thank you.
It's time to be about that life, the startup life. Here's your host, Dominic Lawson.
All right, Startup Nation, so I hope you're ready to receive some value today. My name is Dominic Lawson, and this is The Startup Life, the show for entrepreneurs and career-minded professionals. You know, Startup Nation, you want to know why I love talking to entrepreneurs? It's because, like, their stories are just so amazing. Like, you know, when you hear the challenges and the adversity and rising through it, it's just always super inspiring. We have a serial entrepreneur on today that's going to help us out, share that story and kind of share with us a little bit of that advice. He is, a person who cut his teeth in construction, working his way up at the age of 16. He is the co-founder, president, and CEO of Build, a disruptive payment solution for the construction industry that helps contractors and suppliers grow their business with less hassle and risk. He is my man, Christopher Doyle. C. Doyle, what's up, man?
What's up, Dominic? Thanks for having me on.
No worries, no worries. Are you ready to pour some knowledge into Startup Nation today? It's something we ask all of our guests when they come on.
I don't know about that. I'll talk. How's that? So knowledge is, we'll see.
Gotcha.
Let's figure that out.
I hear that. So, man, let's get started. If you would, man, just kind of share your origin story and your background a little bit, if you don't mind me asking.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm from Houston, Texas, and growing up, first job actually before 16, before I could technically legally work, I jumped into construction, framing houses. Some of my buddies were doing it. It was it's a good way to get a tan and get a good workout in, because you're carrying 20-foot 2x12s, from the front of the lot to the garage. Yeah. So it ended up being and it paid cash every week. It ended up being a great, high school and summer job. And, went to Texas A&M here in Texas. And when I graduated, I joined a home builder. And so just really always found myself navigating into construction. Mm-hmm. From there, after business school, I had gotten a little bit more involved in the finance world. I joined a startup called Dividend Finance. They were a consumer finance company based out of San Francisco, and was responsible for their contractor management and sales and really like channel management. Really started to see the convergence of my skill set, which was heavy on the finance side, but also real hands-on construction experience.
Right.
And I just found that there was a lot of just generally misunderstanding of construction by the capital markets, and specifically in like debt providers.
Gotcha.
Where Wall Street type mentality is saying, look, these guys are super risky. This isn't the kind of borrower that we like. Mm-hmm. It's become a little bit more active with a lot more small business lending out there now, with the Cabbages and Behalfs and On Decks of the world. But still, construction has always been traditionally like a very risky lending space. Gotcha. And I just thought that if you face it head on and your customer very well, and their unique challenges, that this is actually one of the best places for lending, because the payment structure, while very slow, is still predictable and dependable.
Gotcha.
So what we did at Build was develop a product that is the big pain point in construction is, when do I get paid, right?
Right.
When do I get paid? But oh, by the way, I've got to buy the material, I've got to do the work, then I've got to submit my pay application, and then I've got to wait another 60 days to get paid. So that's a big struggle. And so Build, we really look to solve that problem by spanning the gap between what we do is material purchase financing. So
Gotcha.
if a customer needs to buy their material, we allow them to purchase from any supplier that they would, normally purchase from. And this is in commercial construction. So
right.
Parking garages, high schools, retail centers, stadiums, we do really everything.
Gotcha.
They can purchase that material through us. We provide 120-day terms.
Gotcha.
So instead of their normal 30-day terms that they would get through a supplier, now they have that extended amount of time and flexibility. So that way, when they do get paid on the project, which is generally about 100 days out, then they can repay us. And this allows them to take on more projects and just generally have a lot more flexibility in the cash flow.
Gotcha.
So I know that was a lot. That was more than the story, but it was also
It's all good.
A little bit.
It's all good.
No,
it's all good. Thank you for sharing all that. I actually want to ask a follow-up question on all that, because I want to ask you this, because I know by you, always kind of, been working in construction ever since you were 16 and navigating the construction space and stuff like that, that kind of gives you a different type of vantage point when you're talking about, investing and cash flow and stuff like that for construction. I want to ask you this. What is it that Wall Street, when they say that it's a risky proposition and stuff like that, what is it that Wall Street misses that you have to kind of fill in the gaps for?
Yeah, it's not so much that they miss anything. It's that it doesn't fit traditional underwriting boxes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right? So
got it.
If you're looking at a normal lending scenario with a business, you're looking at how much cash do they have, what's the average balances, what is it that they're purchasing? Does it make the business more profitable? Like if it's an equipment, right?
Right.
Is it an asset that they can take possession of in the event of a default?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it like a blanket line of credit, which you could go to really anything? And the problem is, construction subcontractors, they don't have any money in the bank. The cash flow is always a problem. Their
right.
businesses may be worth a lot, but they're not holding on to 500, 600K all the time,
right.
Like a traditional business potentially would have access to through a line of credit.
Right.
They're essentially always with a very low amount of cash. That doesn't mean they're not profitable, and it doesn't mean that they're not successful and strong businesses. It's just they have low cash balances. We see that across the board with all of our businesses. And the reason they have low cash balances is because of the cash flow problem. They're constantly having to put more and more out, and then they have this delay in getting paid. So I think that's the biggest issue. The other is, there are certainly a lot of new businesses that don't have the track record that
fair enough.
Traditional lenders would want to see, especially when you talk about the smaller subcontractors.
Mm-hmm.
But these guys, at least that we, our customers, they're on very sophisticated construction projects, right? This isn't someone that just bought a new piece of equipment and says, okay, I want to be a contractor now.
Right.
And these are folks that have been in the industry 15, 20 years. Sometimes they have just started out, we're able to wrangle up 100,000 or so worth of equipment and start doing major construction projects. So, these are sophisticated guys, right? And so, we look at it as, and they're working with a lot of the, top general contractors in the country on big projects. And they're, from a lending standpoint, there's a lot of protection there for us if we just accept what they are. Mm-hmm. We accept the fact that they're going to have low cash balances. Sometimes they're new businesses. Personal credit sometimes may not be there because they're having to finance their own business, right? But we will look at it at the project level and say, this contractor is going to get paid on this. And that's the way we look at it.
Gotcha.
Very different than a traditional bank lender would.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. Well, let me ask you this, given our new circumstances with this global pandemic and stuff like that. What is construction looking like these days? I know around here, in Memphis, Tennessee, it doesn't seem like construction is kind of really slowed or anything. So what are you seeing as the market kind of continues with construction and building and getting that financing over to subcontractors and things of the like?
Sure. Yeah. I think that you probably, most folks have not seen a slowdown. There are certainly some projects that are on hold,
Right.
due to more safety issues probably than economic.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say there aren't many on hold due to economic issues. More than likely, the commercial construction sector isn't going to see a real slowdown. I would imagine a year or two from now. The big issue that we have is commercial like office space, and with a segment of businesses that are just going out of business and they're being evicted from their space, right? So the property owners, so there's going to be excess supply in commercial office space, and then so why would you continue to build to commercial office space? The other is obviously they work from home, right? A lot of these businesses have this enlightenment. They go, well, shoot, why do we even have offices? We can do this remotely and save ourselves on that rent. So with those two things combined, you can pretty much guarantee that commercial office space new construction is going to see a slowdown from what would be like speculative building. But outside of that, that could be overcome by additional government construction, right?
Gotcha.
Infrastructure work, even like local municipality projects, normal, like your high school, middle school type. I think you'll see a slowdown for universities.
Okay.
Because, higher education has been a construction boom for the last, 15 years.
Gotcha.
And as you see, I don't follow closely higher education economics, but I would imagine you're going to see some reduction in enrollments and they're just their own use of the facilities.
Right.
So you might see a slowdown there.
Right.
Outside of that, I don't expect anything major. From our standpoint, though, I mean, we're still fairly small and nimble. So unless it's a major catastrophic 15% kind of decline, which I don't see at all ever happening, then we're fine just because we're so small.
Gotcha.
And then there might be regional issues where a particular state, what have you, just has a tougher time with what we're going through from an economic standpoint than others.
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing that. I actually want to ask a follow-up question, but before I do that, I want to talk about your website. Startup Nation, if you're in the construction space and you're a supplier or subcontractor or something like that, make sure you check out Build. That's BILLD.com. We have a link there in the show notes for easy access if you're listening to the replay on the podcast. I want to ask you this because I'm on your website right now. And you have this tagline that says, quote, winning the bid is hard enough. Paying for materials shouldn't be, end quote, which I absolutely agree with. But, you were talking about getting like government contracts and municipalities and stuff like that. And I know you talk about how there's a lot of different kind of new people in the construction space, subcontractors and stuff like that. And they're still trying to figure all this stuff out. And they're always trying to like get those government contracts and stuff like that, because that's kind of where the big money is a lot of times in construction. Let me ask you this. What is some of that advice that you would give somebody who's trying to go after a government contract and they're in that construction space?
Yeah. So from a government standpoint, it's a little bit different because, in the private space, you're able to build relationships.
Right.
You might go take that first project at a loss and say, I'm going to go kill this project. And I'm going to impress the superintendent and project manager, and then I'm going to get on, the next two or three of theirs. With government, it's different, right? You can do a fantastic job, but that doesn't really do anything for you next time around because of the public procurement process. Gotcha. And so to get those, I don't know if you would call them lucrative government contracts. I'm sure that exists in other areas, but to get probably the more stable whether it's a one-time project or an ongoing maintenance style project, then you really have to have a I would say slightly sophisticated bidding and estimating process.
Gotcha.
And these public procurement opportunities come up everywhere, so you really have to track them closely.
Right.
And there's lots of services out there that help you identify opportunities that fit your scope. But having a clear proposal process that presents your estimate and price really well shows a lot of credibility. It is certainly time consuming, but to the extent you have the resources to bring someone in that has that experience, that's really the best way to penetrate those markets. It takes so much time that if you're a business owner, a lot of our customers, the business owner themselves are the ones that bid the projects. So they're out in the field they get up in the morning, normally 5 or 6 in the morning, get their crews out at 6:37, right? Then they do some office work, and then they're, in their truck driving to the 2 or 3 projects they have going on for the day. And then they get back, 5 or 6 o'clock at night, and then they bid projects. Well, they take care of any billing or any of that kind of administrative work, and then they start bidding projects, right? So they are grinding away. And to do something like that on a government, you're likely going to have shortcuts, and it's not going to show that credibility that you're looking for. So
Right.
I would say really investing in that bidding process is very important.
Gotcha. Thank you. You know what? Thank you for sharing that, because the thing is, we have a lot of people who are, necessarily, they start businesses and stuff like that, and maybe they're in the construction business and stuff like that. But that nuance between the private type of procurement, process as opposed to like a government or municipality process. I'm glad you showed that juxtaposition between the two when you talked about one is about it's just pretty much straightforward and it doesn't really matter if you do a great job and stuff like that. And the other one is about building relationships and building that rapport and stuff like that. So thank you for that juxtaposition, because I think that's one of those nuances when it comes to construction or even just business as a whole. People don't really know about it. It's you don't really know until you actually jump into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I've done a significant amount of business on both sides.
Right.
And I think the grass is always greener on the other side. You're doing government work and you're going, man, I wish I could do this private stuff. I don't have to chase so hard. And when I build that relationship, I can extract margin out of that, right? Because I do a good job. I take care of my customer, and they're willing to pay a higher price for that reliability and quality. Now, when you're on the other, which you don't really get in public procurement, it's just tough to do that.
Right.
But if you're doing all private work, you're going, man, I love that predictable nature of government work. And those contracts must be super fat, and they get $2-3 million worth of ongoing work. This is fantastic. It's almost like you should just pick one, because to try to do both, they really are different skill sets from a business development and how you get your sales, how you get your business,
right? But
also the back end stuff. Government work is a real pain in the ass. Whether it's a local municipality or federal job, there's just lots of different things that you have to abide by,
right?
And if you don't have that setup, it's just not even worth it. Really focus your time on your private work and just really ignore all your public work, or vice versa.
Right. Right. And I imagine a lot of times in the municipality, if you were to go to that route, there's a lot, because you talked about there's a lot of stuff that's kind of whatever. I imagine in that route, there's a lot of times where the people who are making the decision aren't really familiar with that space. And in this case, construction. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, that's another point from how to get more government work is, a lot of these government officials or representatives, and the procurement teams are the ones generally making the decision. And,
right.
And oftentimes there's a panel, they're reviewing and scoring and things like that. But getting ahead of opportunities and educating them, really having influence on the RFP. I mean, that's the goal from a public procurement standpoint. If you're going after public projects, because you can have that influence up front and educate them how they should evaluate contractors, how they should define the scope of work in the RFP.
Right.
That's if you can get that kind of influence, you very much bettered your chances of getting the project.
All right, Startup Nation. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. We got to pay some bills. Once again, my name is Dominic Lawson, and you're listening to The Startup Life. Check it out, Startup Nation. I know many of you are trying to improve your marketing performance, right? You have your business or your e-commerce store and you're trying to increase that brand awareness. No worries, I got you. You should listen to the brand new Keep Optimizing podcast. That's optimizing with an S and not a Z. It's a marketing podcast that will provide you with not only the latest tips and advice in the game, but also you will hear from experts in their field when it comes to email marketing, SEO, and more. This is a must-listen to podcast for my e-commerce entrepreneurs. It's hosted by Chloe Thomas, who is a 15-year marketing expert, best-selling author, and award-winning podcast host. It's already a top 20 marketing podcast in 7 countries. So clearly, you're going to get amazing value every episode. So as you can see, Startup Nation, you're in good hands with my girl CT. So listen and subscribe to the Keep Optimizing podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you like to get your favorite podcast. You can also get more information at keepoptimizing.com. The link is there in the show notes. Oralex powers this episode of The Startup Life. Startup Nation, as a podcaster, radio host, and business owner, I know a thing or two about the need for your message to come through clearly to your target audience. The last thing you want when trying to close a big deal over the phone or giving a sales presentation in your conference room is to have the person you are talking to be distracted by either the fact that you sound like you're in a warehouse or an outside noise like a fire truck. Trust me, Startup Nation, I know this all too well from experience. And that is why Oralex has your back. Oralex Acoustics creates professionally tested products that you can trust in a commercial space or at home. Better office acoustics improves intelligibility when video conferencing or generic conversation, reduces stress, and helps build a proactive work atmosphere. From a home studio for my content creators to your office space downtown, your gear performs better in an acoustically treated room. Trust me, you are in good hands with Oralex as they are the #1 brand in acoustics, providing trusted solutions for over 40 years. Also, you can download the Oralex Acoustic Treatment mobile app in the Apple or Google Play Store to give you specifically designed and instantaneous recommendations for various room types. Go to Oralex.com and use the promo code STARTUP in all caps for 10% off your entire order. The link is there in the show notes if you are listening to the replay on the podcast. So if you are ready to stop sounding like you're having a sales meeting in a sports arena, go with Oralex. Professional audio made simple. Tresta powers this episode of The Startup Life. Okay, Startup Nation, I want to talk to you about our sponsor, Tresta. Tresta is an app for iPhone and Android that lets you do business calling and texting from anywhere. I know so many entrepreneurs that are still using their personal phone number for business calls. It can get complicated drawing the line between your personal and professional life. Startup Nation, this is the best business phone app out there. Whether you just need a business phone number or if your team is ready for a complete business phone system, Tresta is totally flexible and can grow with your business. And it's all unlimited. Calling, texting, and all of the powerful call management features like auto attendance, call recording, user groups, and more for just $15 per user per month. With Tresta, there's no contract, and you don't need any special hardware, just your smartphone you're already using. Tresta is easy to configure, so you can set everything up yourself, all online, avoiding all the hassle and high overhead costs of setting up a traditional business phone system, which is important because as entrepreneurs, we are always trying to cut cost and time. They're offering a 30-day free trial so you can see if Tresta's virtual phone system is right for you. Communicate smarter and more efficiently with Tresta. Start now at Tresta.com/startuplife. That's TRESTA.com/startuplife. The link is there in the show notes if you're listening on the podcast. Tresta, business communication simplified. All right, Startup Nation, welcome back as we continue our conversation with today's guest here on The Startup Life. Once again, Startup Nation, we're talking to Christopher Doyle, president, co-founder, president, and CEO of Build. So, and we have a link there in the show notes if you're listening to the replay on the podcast. I want to ask you this, Chris. So kind of walk me through the process. Let's say I'm a contractor. I'm looking for some funding to get some stuff, get materials and stuff like that. Walk me through the onboarding process of Build.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, from a contractor standpoint, it's pretty easy.
Mm-hmm.
So you start really by going to the website, and there's an enroll button right there on the website. It takes less than 5 minutes to enroll your business, and then you essentially just drag and drop a material quote from your supplier, and we do the rest.
Mm.
So we identify the supplier. We'll reach out to them if we're not already working with them. We'll arrange payment, and we really do all of that. So it makes it, outside of the flexibility of terms, it makes it really, really easy for contractors to purchase material, because, like I mentioned before, a lot of these guys are business owners. They're out in the trucks all day, driving from job site to job site. They don't even have time to connect with the supplier and go, let's go through this review. Let's, okay, is it scoped out right? Do you have sales tax? What's the shipping? Any of that. They're just like, I need this paid because I need the material tomorrow. So we do same day turnaround on account approvals, on purchase approvals. Our company is built to react very, very quickly. This isn't a situation like traditional lending where you submit your 5-page application with audited financials and bank statements and this and that. No, the way we're structured is we do everything on the back end. Why ask a customer to do something that you can do for them? The only thing we really need is their tax ID, right? Gotcha. Why do I need to have them fill this and that out? I know what it is. We can figure that out. We can go to their website. We can see what their phone number, their address, these kinds of things. So that's the approach we take in everything, to make the manual process for them very, very simple. And, when we get these quotes, like we know a thing or two about construction. So the other thing that we do is, we're taking a look to say, is this right? Is this not so much as just a good price? Because that's really not our expertise, to always be looking at SKUs and going, is this the right price for this? But oftentimes we'll see things like, in the footnote, 2.5% cash discount. Well, guess what? We're paying up front. Right. So is that applied here? So we'll reach out to the supplier and say, hey, we're going to pay up front. So can we get that discount? And all that's passed to the customer. Right. So there are things like that we found. Just actually last week, I was processing a deal myself and had identified things. We saved the customer $25,000 just by reading the supplier quote and saying, well, this application, it isn't correct. This should be pulled off the invoice. And of course, all of that passes on to the customer.
Right. Thank you for sharing all of that, for sure. I want to ask you this, because I know you tout you and your company more as a construction company than a fintech company. Kind of share with me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So we only operate in the construction space. That's our primary focus.
Gotcha.
And, I think our ethos is our customer, right? To us, we, you don't even come in the door of this office unless you have a passion for the customer.
I hear that.
And, our customer is different, right? It's not consumer driven. It's not as sexy as some, other things may be. These are small business owners a lot of times, that are doing, construction work, right? And a lot of it is more blue collar. And if you can't get excited about that and get excited about helping a contractor take their business to the next level, then you shouldn't work here, right? And
Fair enough.
Because of that, we really do position ourselves and think of ourselves as more of a construction company, because we're living the same and having some of the same problems that our customers have, right? And we understand them very well. And we've set up our business really to accommodate those things rather than ignore them and say, well, that's not really our problem. That's our customer's problem.
Gotcha.
If it's our customer's problem, it's our problem.
Gotcha. I love that, that approach, because it's like when you talk about, like, if somebody were to go to a bank to get a loan and stuff like that, they're not necessarily from the construction space. They're just looking at the numbers. And sometimes, and we've talked to other people. We've talked to a past guest. His name's Rashad Tabakawala. He says that sometimes looking at the numbers, if I have to pick between looking at the numbers and looking at the story, I'm going to pick the story because the story tells me so much more. And it seems like you kind of, take that similar approach when it comes to, assessing risk and looking at who's a good fit but ultimately who's going to help the customer. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. The numbers don't tell the story.
Right.
And, a lot of times they're even the wrong numbers.
Fair enough.
Right. You
right.
should be looking at.
Right. For sure. Thank you for sharing that. I want to ask you this because, I was looking at an article here at the, was this Open PR? I'm not even sure where this comes from, but anyway, it talks about how artificial intelligence in the construction space and stuff like that. And, and I've seen these videos from like Boston Dynamics of like robots, putting up drywall and stuff like that. I want to ask you this, man, like, what's your take on that? Give me some commentary on how because we always see talking about AI and not necessarily replacing jobs. Maybe sometimes they replace some few jobs and stuff like that. But what's your take on AI in the construction space? What's your commentary on that?
So particularly, let me start with just technology and construction.
Sure, absolutely.
Construction has always been behind in technology. They still fax in their bids for projects. Mm-hmm. There's still a lot of printing going on, right?
Right.
So they're always, it seems like, a step and a half behind. Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of that's the opportunity, right? And so with the big, huge technology boom we've had over the last 20 years, there a lot of technology companies are targeting construction because they say, look at all these inefficiencies. And adoption has traditionally been an issue to say, well, this is a historically older group of people, right? Superintendents, project managers, been doing construction 20 plus years.
Right.
And their willingness to adopt things is slower, right? Mm. But what you see now is a lot of breakthroughs in that, from project-specific tools for project management, like a Procore,
right,
who build, shameless plug here, who build recently integrated with them, and we have an app on their project management platform. Mm-hmm. But you've seen the penetration that they've made and other technology providers, and that's paved the way for so many more new technology companies to come in and just make the overall construction industry more efficient. Now, when it comes to AI, there's tons and tons of opportunity for that.
Okay.
Whether it's in like quality assurance, in like photos and things like that.
Okay.
Meaning, can you span a construction project? They're all the same thing, right? So a room with drywall and metal studs is a room with drywall and metal studs. Can you span that room with a continuous camera and through AI identify common quality issues, right? And absolutely, that kind of stuff is in play, right? Is the wiring properly? Is the electrical box properly secured to the metal stud? Little details like that through AI you absolutely can do. Construction contracts,
right?
It's another big thing with AI right now is reviewing PDFs and being able to like learn from them and identify potential red flags. That's something that we look at now because we verify a lot of projects. Bidding on projects too, right? You're going through 100, 200 page plans and specifications, and you have just your one little scope. Is it efficient for 10 companies that do, say, sprinkler systems to independently all go in and estimate a project? Why? You can do some of this stuff automatically so easily, right? So I think you'll see a lot there. There's certainly a lot of opportunity. The thing is, it's the adoption rate, right? And I think you can be very optimistic right now because of some of the early technology providers that have finally broken through and gotten a decent amount of adoption from both general contractors and subs together.
Thank you for sharing that, for sure. I appreciate that, because I just wanted to get your take on, because like we see how AI is kind of like, some people are kind of like, oh no, like they're going to take our jobs. And some people are like, no, it's just enhancing certain things and stuff like that. So I appreciate you kind of sharing and being transparent about that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
No worries. I want to go back a little bit because, we talked about how at the top of the show, how you kind of started in construction at 16 and stuff like that. Two-part question. One, tell me about that first day on a job. And then two, what was like a story or a lesson that you learned that you still implement kind of like in your business and how you go about scaling Bill to this day?
Yeah, no, I remember so clearly my first day.
Okay.
So, when you're framing houses, you have your tool belt, right? It goes around your waist. It carries your hammer and all your, your tape measure, nail gun racks, all the stuff that you got to have with you. And so I had my new trusty tool belt and my new hammer, and I was ridiculed. I was ridiculed for showing up with this new gear. It was a lot like, Stan Lott, where he shows up with his, his huge hat and his like old, like crappy baseball glove.
Right.
And, I don't remember the character, but, the mentor guy says, here, take my hat, take my glove.
Gotcha.
I had a very similar moment. And, I think about, actually, the team here is sick of me saying this, but I think about it all the time when we do our advertising with photographs. And construction is one of the worst stock photo libraries out there, where you have this kind of guy with a yellow hard hat and this like fresh tool belt and this like ridiculous hammer. And it's like showing him, pointing out in the distance with a plan, and someone in a suit, who looks like maybe the owner or something like that.
Right.
And it's like, this is ridiculous. This is not what construction looks like. This isn't what a job looks like. So I'm actually, I kind of approve most photos actually, because the team knows when they post something and it looks stupid, that I'm like, nope, it has to look authentic.
Right.
So that's always been the impact, but it's has an effect on all kinds of things. Like, how do you relate to a customer, right? And like, actually being there and experiencing it and really knowing their pain points. And I don't mean like their pain points like cash flow, things like that. I mean like the pain point of like dropping a 2x12 when you're sitting on on one of the rafters,
like literal
like that
pain
kind
points.
of pain point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what's it like to climb on a roof? What's it like to be on a scaffold? Right. And that kind of thing. And just knowing like, how do you get your tools from your truck up to the job every day? Do you secure them? It's just like all this little stuff.
Right.
And having that experience is, I just think, puts us so much further ahead of traditional lenders that want to get in the space and like super stuffy, don't understand the customer at all.
Right.
And they can't solve their pain points. They just don't know it.
Exactly. And it seems like that's kind of your, a competitive advantage in this space as you scale Bill. Because that's what I was saying earlier. It's like, it's one thing to say, oh, these numbers don't make sense. And like, it's going to take you X amount of years to be profitable. But it's a whole nother thing to be like, no, but I know what their plan is. I know that story. So I know if this will work, or the likelihood of something like this will work with their business model and stuff like that. So I appreciate you sharing that, man.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
For sure. I want to ask you this really quickly because, so I want to ask you this really quickly because I want to ask you about like your time at Texas A&M. Tell me about, some of those experiences and any stories you want to share, but also what kind of student were you?
Well, after my first semester, I was on scholastic probation.
Gotcha.
I had to get my stuff together. So I went to Texas A&M for my undergrad and Rice out of Houston for my MBA. And, I think both were like super different experiences. Mm-hmm. One, I was just a kid. It teaches you a lot about life too. You're going, you put these kids in these situations, they have to like define their life by, determining their major and saying like, this is what I'm going to study and what I'm going to do when I grow up. And like, no one knows what they want to do at that point. And so I was no exception. I had no clue. I ended up just picking the easiest thing after I got on scholarship probation.
Gotcha.
So I was a political science major, and it was something that I loved, right? I loved. It's something I found really interesting. I said, that's a cool idea. And, I worked all the way through school. I didn't take it all that seriously. I graduated, thank God.
Right.
And got the degree and, moved on past that. Big difference from MBA, right? Business school was, I loved the kinds of things that I was learning every day. It was a lot so Rice is a private school, so a lot smaller.
Right.
And so I was able to, meet my classmates and have a whole nother relationship. At A&M, it's like all the classes are so large that it's like you don't really have any of the same classes with the same people, and you definitely don't have a personal relationship with the professors most of the time.
Gotcha.
Rice is a totally different experience. We have that intimate, closeness with both your classmates, but also the professors, and just a whole nother level of interest. It's like I could immediately apply these kinds of things and contribute to class discussion, and just, to me, business school is such a advantage of just learning so many different things.
Gotcha.
And having that broad business foundation. So whether we're talking about medical, transportation, insurance, construction, I can jump in and participate on a conversation and really just jump right in, right? I don't need, and just know when to ask questions. Say, well, I don't understand that. Well, you know what? I have a strong foundation. If you can't explain that to me, then this is your problem, not my problem.
Right.
I should be able to, understand pretty much any business concept. So yeah, I had a great time, but very different experiences between the two. And I would also recommend anyone considering, going to business school to take that plunge, because to me, it's paid like 10x dividends.
I hear that. Thank you for sharing all of that for sure. Hey, Chris, man, what's your entrepreneurial superpower?
I mean, it's being impatient.
Okay.
It's my biggest strength and my biggest weakness. Why is this taking so long? What if it's taking 2 hours? Why can't we do it in an hour?
Gotcha.
If it's taking an hour, why can't we do it in 30 minutes?
I hear that.
Why is this initiative 6 months? Let's do it in a month. It can't be that hard. Let's do it.
Gotcha.
Right. And so it's that impatience, I think, drives and sets this culture of execution. And, we get a lot of things done, and we're really proud of that too, about how efficient we are. And we leave these other guys in dust,
right,
on how fast we can move. So definitely superpower, but also super weakness, and there is certainly a time in life, both in business and in life, to be patient. And, it can be tough sometimes.
Double-edged sword, right?
You're tapping your feet going, okay, hurry up.
Gotcha. No, I understand that. It's funny you mention that, because a few weeks back, we had on Daniel Scribner, and he's a tech guy, and he worked for both Jack Dorsey at Square and Steve Jobs at Apple. And he said that,
cool. Yeah.
And so one of the things that he said was very similar to what you're saying, is that they were both what's one of those things that they both do well, or just kind of leads to the success that they've had. And he said they're both uncompromising, right? And they do that not just for the people that work for them or work with them, but they have that for themselves as well. But they also said that sometimes that can be, once again, a double-edged sword and stuff like that, because there's been times where maybe I should have kind of shifted just a little bit. So I appreciate you sharing that and being transparent about that for sure.
Yeah, I think I try to focus on what's really best for the team, and how do my actions motivate and encourage the team.
Gotcha.
And that's really what it's about. I'm not building a company. the team is building the company.
Gotcha.
And it's one of the lessons I learned pretty early on, because this is my second business to start,
Right.
but the first one wasn't private equity backed, so it was a very different experience. And so now I have like a team of people, and I've got it's just me. So I started early and to do a lot of things myself and realized that I'm not really good at almost all of them.
Gotcha.
So how do I create an environment that, number one, that attracts the most talented people out there, and two, gives them the motivation to really run with their skills, right? And I'm not sure I'm good at it, but it's something I'm very, very focused on right now.
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing that. I want to ask a quick follow-up, because you talked about, your team and stuff like that. I saw, on the website that, you just hired Eric Reynolds not too long ago as the chief risk officer for the company there at Build and stuff like that. Let me ask you this, man. How do you go about evaluating talent? How do you go about evaluating this person is a great fit, not only for this role, but for the culture of Build?
Yeah, another super weakness. I think we've been pretty lucky.
Okay.
And Eric's phenomenal. We got really lucky with him.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that's luck, but I read this book called Who, which goes through a CEO and his journey, and really devoting his kind of career to putting all of his responsibilities aside and going out and finding the best people and having a process to identify the best people for the company. And so we take it very seriously. And the process is probably flawed, but for most roles, we have at least 5 or 6 people interview, which is, anywhere between 20 and 30% of the company. Right. So, and then we have them spend a day in the office. So that ends up being pretty enlightening,
right?
Because you can see their comfort level, right? You can see some of the nuances you don't see, and we put them to work, right? So they come in and we just do our thing all day, right? They sit in on meetings. We ask them to participate. Sometimes you see things like I'm very anti Mr. Know-it-all, right? So we'll see sometimes people come in and they try to be Mr. Know-it-all, and part of that's probably that they want to impress people, but they want to impress people in the interview. They're going to try and impress people when they work here too.
Gotcha.
And it's not about being, the one that has all the flashy ideas. It's really who can listen, who can collaborate with the team, who can not contribute when it's not time to contribute, right?
Gotcha.
And it's not their expertise.
Right.
Who can ask the right questions too, right? And so we find that process works great, especially with senior folks. And it weeds out people that they just, they're not a good fit, right? It's not a good fit for them.
Right.
Maybe it's the kind of cavalier office environment that they might appreciate. Maybe it's the music in the background they don't love.
Right.
But we can sort through a lot of that by having that, one day. It's not even an interview. It's just come in. You also just assess their technical competency. It's like, do you know anything about this? Do you really know anything now that we're talking about hands-on stuff?
Right. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. And before we wrap up with Chris Doyle, I just want to say, Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. You gave amazing content, amazing value, and everything. I really enjoyed your time on the show. And once again, Startup Nation, the website is BILLD.com if you're listening on radio. And if you're listening to the replay on the podcast, we have a link there in the show notes for easy access. All right, Chris, man. So look, I'm actually going to turn the microphone over to you because there's a startup founder or somebody out there that's having a tough time, they're quite discouraged with everything going on. Give some words of encouragement to take us out for today, if you would, please, sir.
Oh, man. So, encouragement. Well, there's 2. If you have a business, my whole mantra right now is if you have a business that's struggling, do whatever you can to keep the business on. Don't sink the ship, right? The absolute best thing you can do for your business, for your employees, for your family, for your employees' families is keep the business alive. If it means trimming up in certain areas, then do it, right? Because it gives you the opportunity to hire them back down the road. Anything you can do to keep the business running, do it. For those that haven't started a business, do it. I mean, get in. It's fun. It's exciting. You're going to love it. You'll have the time of your life. Whether it's successful or not, it's just so enlightening. You are able to do so many fantastic things. And to me, there's no other way but starting and running small businesses, because it's just every day is exciting. You have such a close relationship with your team, and you're just able to make an impact in the industry. So, getting off that line is the hardest part. So anything, you can do, just do it. Just get off the line.
I hear that. Get off the line, Startup Nation. And that's going to wrap up this session of the Startup Life. Christopher Doyle, thank you so much for coming on the show once again. And as always, Startup Nation, if you have an idea, be about that life, the Startup Life. And we are done, my man. Thank you so much for your time, your content, and your energy. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dominic. Appreciate it.
No worries. Do you have any questions for me before I let you go?
No, I think I'm good. Yeah, thanks for the time.
All right, no worries, man. I'm going to let you go. You have a good one.
All right, you too. Bye.
If you want to let us know what you think about our show, have an idea for a show topic, or would like to advertise on our show, send us a message on the Startup Life Podcast Facebook page. And while you are there, like and follow our page as well. It's a great way for us to engage with you, Startup Nation, and really grow our community. The link is there in the show notes. Subscribe to the show, as it can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, or even on your Facebook timeline or any other platform you like to get your podcast. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts and you find our content valuable, please give us a 5-star rating, as it will help us climb the charts and help more people find our show. You can also listen to the show on the Startup Life Podcast new website. There you will find the all-new startup blog, where I write on many topics that are interesting and helpful to you on your path to entrepreneurship. And hey, if you have an idea, be about that life, the Startup Life.